there, I am Prabjot Kaur and I welcome you to the first lecture in the series of lectures on ROS, which stands for Robot Operating System. So if you're building applications for robots, no matter how complex they are, such as if you want to build a mobile robot that goes from point A to point B autonomously, or you want to build a robotic manipulator, which is really a robotic arm, and you want that robotic arm to do a certain task in the environment. So all of these complex applications can be built on top of ROS because ROS takes care of the lower level software. So in your software stack, it acts as a middleware. So just to give you one example, if you are building an autonomously moving robot, there are going to be many applications. So there is going to be object detection, there's going to be mapping, localization, planning, and control of that robot. So for the robot to do the job of going from point A to point B autonomously, all of these applications need to communicate with each other. Now, that communication infrastructure is what ROS gives you. So this is just one example of where you don't have to reinvent the wheel, where you have to write your own communication infrastructure. So here ROS gives you that. You can just focus your efforts on your application that you really want to develop. Before we go into the details, I just want to emphasize that ROS is completely open source and it is maintained by community members who are volunteering their time to maintain and develop ROS. So I just want to give a shout out to them for making this available for free to all of us. In this video, we are going to focus on installing ROS, and in the next following videos, we will really start to learn about the ROS architecture, what it is, and then maybe build an application to just to piece everything together that we would have learned through this series of videos. So let's go here on their page of getting started. Right now it's February of 2025 and I see these two distributions. So depending upon what version of operating system you have, you can install either Jazzy Jalisco or you can install Humble Hawksbill, and there are also prior versions of ROS. You can install the older versions as well if that's the kind of operating system you have on your machine. I have Ubuntu 22.04, so I'm going to have ROS to Humble Hawksbill installed on my machine. If you don't know what kind of operating system you have or what version of Ubuntu you have, maybe that's the first thing to start. So if you want to know what version of Ubuntu you have, you can simply go here on your terminal and you can type a command called lsp_release-a and it will give you what version of Ubuntu is installed on your machine. So now let's go into the installation and we will go on this page. This page tells you that for installing ROS, there are two different ways. You can either use binary packages or you can build from source. In my case, I'm going to use their binary packages. For Ubuntu, they say that there are two different ways again. You can either use deb packages or binary archives. I'm going to use their recommended approach of using deb packages. Now here you see a lot of commands and literally all we have to do is go through them step by step and copy paste each one on your terminal, and then by the time you're done with all these instructions, you would have installed ROS on your machine. ROS is really good at documentation. This is one of the very few open source software that has excellent documentation. We don't really need a video of how to install ROS because we just follow the documentation. So I am going to be brief in this video because I have already installed ROS simply by following the steps here. if you run into issues with your installations, there is a lot of support available online. You can simply post your question on the web. I am pretty sure you will find an answer. So I'm not going to go through these steps one by one, but I'm going to highlight some of the important things. So maybe just listen to this video before you install, and then you can come back to this documentation and just follow their steps. So here, before we go into all of these, I want to go to the troubleshooting section. So here, there are some tips that tell you that if you don't see your ROS working, maybe these are the reasons. So here under the general, this is just telling you to enable multiclass if it is not already enabled. The point that I want to emphasize on this page is Anaconda Python conflict. If you are working on machine learning projects like I was, as if you have been with me on this channel, you know that we have been working on speech-to-speech processing, and we have worked with FairSeek and all of those libraries, and I was using Anaconda for all of my Python projects. Now, here is an important thing. Here they say Conda does not work in conjunction with ROS2. So we will see some issues if you have Conda environment and then you have ROS2 on your machine. So what they're saying is make sure that your path environment variable does not have Conda paths in it. In my case, I am not going to be working on any projects in my Conda environment, so I have took the liberty to uninstall Anaconda. But if you want to keep Anaconda on your computer, then you must follow their steps. So what do they mean by this? So I will show you my bash RC when I had Anaconda on my machine. So let me show you the snippet. So as you can see here, towards the end is all of the Conda stuff. So what they are saying there is this line 130 that says export path equals all of that. So you need to comment that out if you want to keep Anaconda on your machine while you're working with ROS2. So that's all they're saying there. Now let's go back here to the installation. So assuming you are following along, if you're not, then you can just pause here and follow along all the steps. Just copy these into your terminal one by one. And then once you reach and have executed this step, sudo apt upgrade, then this is where I also want to just add a point, because it may not be very obvious what you have to do here if you are doing it for the very first time. So what here it is saying, between all these three lines here, you only need to install one of these depending on what you want. In my case, I want to have ROS, RWiz, demos and tutorials. So I am going to do a desktop install. And that means I am going to just copy this and paste it in my terminal and execute that command. And I can simply skip this ROS base install and development tools. So this is either or. So either this or this or this. And I have installed this in my case. So that's really it. So now the installation is complete. And next we can try some example to make sure that installation was done properly. So we're going to use their example called Talker Listener. So Talker Listener is a simple example where you have two applications. They're also called nodes in ROS speak. So you have two different applications. One application is called Talker, the other application is called Listener. The Talker is going to publish some data, and the listener is going to listen to the talker. So these two applications are going to talk to each other or communicate with each other. So let's fire up our terminal. So like I said, I already have humble Hawksbill installed on my machine. So I'm going to show you an example of this Docker listener. So here, as they say, in the first terminal, we are going to copy this line and we are going to paste it. So here really you are sourcing into this setup script, and that is very, very critical. Anytime you open a new terminal when you're working in ROS2, you have to source into this setup bash script every time. So here I'm done that, and then I'm going to start this node called Docker, and I'm going to paste it here, and we will see this node starts to publish some data. In this case, it's publishing hello world 1 2 3 4 and so on. Now I'm going to open a second terminal. In my second terminal, I'm going to start a second node called listener. But the first thing, we have to source into this setup script. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to start the node called listener. And this node is going to say that I heard whatever the listener was publishing. It says I heard hello world and then the numbers. So the program is working. So that means the ROS installation was successful. Now, if you notice one thing, anytime you open a terminal, you have to paste this line. You have to source into this setup script, which can be pretty annoying if you're having to open multiple terminals depending upon how many nodes you want to start in your project. So there is a trick, and I'm going to share that trick with you, but let's just close these. The trick is you can copy this line, source, and sourcing into setup script. You can copy this line and paste into your bash RC. If you do that, then you no longer have to copy paste this line every time you open a new terminal. So let's edit our bash RC. My bash RC, and I am just going to copy the line source into my bash RC at the very end. So towards the end, I'm just going to paste that, and I am going to save it and close the file. Let's clear all of that, and let's also clear this. Okay, now what I'm going to show you, maybe let's just actually close these terminals, because I want to show you that whenever you open a new terminal now, you no longer have to source into this manually, because the bash RC takes care of it now. So let's open a new terminal. In that new terminal, I'm simply going to start this node, Docker, and it is running, which is good. And then I'm going to start a second node, listener. And it's going to run as well. And there you go. So this is just one trick that is not on the documentation and was worth mentioning, because otherwise you would be having to source this every time you start a new terminal. That was the only trick. Other than that, the documentation is pretty complete, and I'm very confident you will follow along what they're saying here and have a successful ROS installation. That's all for today's lecture, and I wish you luck on rest of your ROS journey. Stay with me and we will go through all the tutorials and build some cool applications. For now, thank you, and I will see you in the next video.